Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Stuart Pline. I want to welcome you to Colleen's internship presentation, and thank you all so much for coming. Colleen is a senior double majoring in English and Women and Gender Studies from Morgantown, West Virginia. She will be graduating in May of 2024. Colleen has been working this semester as the Rare Book intern on a recently donated collection of books by science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, very popular in the 20th century. The collection also includes a few other science fiction authors, notably Piers Anthony and Ursula Le Guin. For her internship, Colleen was given an assignment designed to instruct interns on curatorial processing, decision-making, critical thinking about the book as a historical and artifactual object, recognizing value beyond the monetary, and development of the curatorial eye that is essential to developing and overseeing a collection. Essentially, this assignment teaches students to read a book from an entirely different perspective. There are 4 components to the internship assignment. First, there's a complete research-oriented, comprehensively annotated bibliography of the book collection being processed. 2, a shorter secondary annotated illustrated bibliography of books that are of particular interest from a curatorial perspective. The goal of this bibliography is to highlight 10, or in Colleen's case, 13 books from the collection that the intern found to be compelling from the larger project. This bibliography will also include a curatorial statement. 3, a blog post, which will be posted next week, reflecting on the internship experience that will be published in the library's news blog. And finally, a capstone component comprised of developing and creating an exhibit based on the curatorial statement and the bibliography. And I want to say this exhibit is up in the library's atrium here in the downtown campus library. And Lorene has created the largest exhibit of any intern previously. Most interns do 1 or 2 cases, but Lorene has created an entire exhibit that comprises 5 cases. So I hope that everyone will be able to stop by and see her exhibit. And to close, I'd like to say, I think it's safe to say that Colleen has enjoyed working on this assignment. Over the course of this exercise, Colleen has applied analytical and critical thinking skills coupled with her knowledge of English and gender studies as part of the professional writing and editing program. Colleen quickly grasped terminology and applied it, descriptive techniques for book evaluation, and most importantly, she has connected with the books on both a curatorial and personal level, which is revealed in her exhibit. There will be a chance to ask questions after the presentation. Colleen's exhibit, again, is in the atrium of the downtown library, and I hope you'll be able to stop by. May I introduce to you Colleen Benison to share her presentation, I Intern. Take it away, Colleen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Stuart, and thank you to everyone who's in attendance today to see my presentation. My name is Colleen Benison, and I have spent the last semester working with WVU Libraries as a Rare Book Room intern, and I'm very excited to share my experience with all of you. Okay. So I know Stuart just gave me an introduction, but I'd like to share a bit more about myself. Like she said, I'm a senior at WVU from Morgantown. I'm double majoring in English and Women's and Gender Studies with a minor in psychology. My area of emphasis for my English degree is professional writing and editing. For the past 2 years, I've also worked with the English undergraduate literary magazine Calliope as a reader last year and an editor this year. And so this semester, I had the opportunity to further strengthen my writing, editing, and design skills, and also learn about the library system by interning with the Rare Book Room. And this internship serves as my professional writing and editing capstone experience. I sought out an internship with the Rare Book Room because I was inspired by one of my fellow English majors who has since graduated, Catherine Hardy. She completed the same internship last semester, and the project she worked on sounded very interesting, and she spoke very highly about her experience. So I reached out to Stuart first to get a tour of the Rare Book Room, and then to find out if she needed an intern for the fall. And thankfully she did. So the collection. For this internship, I was tasked with carrying a collection of books through the library's entire gift processing procedure. And the collection I was lucky enough to work with was a personal collection of books that was gifted to the Rare Book Room by avid reader and dedicated collector Larry Miller. Processing this collection entailed cataloging 125 books, 45 comic books, more than 100 pieces of personal correspondence between the collector Larry Miller and two of his favorite authors, Isaac Asimov and Piers Anthony. And there were also a handful of cutout excerpts from magazines and newspapers and things like that. So as you can probably tell by the title of this presentation, the collection centers around science fiction, particularly the science fiction writing of Isaac Asimov. With a background in hard sciences of chemistry and biology, he began writing science fiction stories in 1939. He was incredibly prolific, writing, editing, and publishing more than 600 titles throughout his writing career. 600. While his authorship spans many subjects, ranging from science to literary criticism, from history to religion, he's best known for his contributions to the genre of science fiction. Here, like as you can see here, there's a few of the series that he's best known for, but perhaps his most beloved work is I, Robot, for which I titled this presentation, I, Intern. The collection I worked on centers around Asimov's writing, but also the writing of other science fiction writers like Robert A. Heinlein, Ursula Le Guin, and Piers Anthony. So the first major component of the internship experience is the development of a comprehensive annotated bibliography that catalogs and appraises each book in the collection. This annotated bibliography will be used to fully integrate the collection into the library system. So to appraise them, decide where they need to go, etc. The process of cataloging each book in the annotated bibliography involves these 6 main steps: observing and describing the book, assessing the book's condition, checking its availability within WVU libraries, researching the book on bookseller platforms, estimating its value, and then finally recommending a placement within the library system. So this process begins with carefully observing each book in order to identify and properly describe its publishing information, design, and physical condition. Publishing information includes its title, its authors and or editors, whether it's a first edition, second edition, things like that. The design would include features like typography, cover illustrations, any special decorative features like stamps, deco edges, gilded edges, things like that. This was really interesting, and it challenged me to describe the book in a creative way while still within the style of the annotated bibliography. And then the physical condition was not the most challenging, but the newest aspect of this to me. I had to learn all sorts of book terminology, and be able to identify it. So this would include features like creases or tears in a dust jacket, a broken spine, foxing, bumping, water damage to the boards, or the lack of any of these features. So for example, this image on the left shows just one of many books in this collection that was underlined and annotated in red pen. And we can tell that this book was actually read and very well loved by the collector. Based on my observations, I assessed the condition of the book according to standard grading for used books. The highest quality condition begins at as new and works its way down to fine, near fine, very good, good, fair, and then the lowest quality condition, poor. The majority of this collection's books were around average condition, falling within the good to near fine range. They showed minor signs of wear, like rubbing and, as we saw earlier, underlining, but were otherwise in good shape. From their condition, we can tell that they were well loved, but handled freely, and they still have plenty of life left in them. I then checked the availability of the book within the WVU library system. This allows me to see whether or not WVU has any physical and/or digital versions of the book. And if it does, I can see where those copies are located and how they can be accessed. Step 4 and 5 kind of go together. So I compare the gift book that I'm processing to other copies for sale on various bookseller platforms. And my main 3 sources were the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America, ABAA, A-Books, and ADAL. And then I can use this information to estimate a monetary value for the gift book, which is an important aspect for the library's records for insurance purposes if anything bad were to happen for the books. The final step in this process was to determine an appropriate location for the gift book that best suits its full potential for use, whether that's being available for reading or employed as a teaching tool in the rare book room. And the majority of the books in this collection will either go to the rare book room, be incorporated into the library's circulating stacks, or be retained as a collection in the library depository. So the final product of this, after 13 weeks of part-time internship work, was this final annotated bibliography. So this means I viewed and created an entry for every book, comic, and miscellaneous magazine and newspaper excerpt. The resulting annotated bibliography turned out to be 75 pages long and includes a total of 172 entries. But that of course wasn't the end of the collection. There's also the personal correspondence. So in addition to the annotated bibliography for the books, I created a separate inventory for the personal correspondence. And this included 2 lines of communication between the collector Larry Miller and Isaac Asimov and Miller and Piers Anthony. So both lines of communication included dozens of postcards, memos, some multi-page letters, all demonstrating like this friendship that they shared. The correspondence between Miller and Asimov spanned from 1972 to 1989. And the correspondence between Miller and Anthony spanned from 1976 to 1998. So more than a decade of communication on both sides. This part of the collection took a lot of time to sort through and organize, but it was very interesting and very cool to hold what felt like this long lost niche pieces of science fiction history in my hands. It's very interesting. The second major component of the internship experience is the development of a secondary illustrated mini bibliography that features a selection of books representing a particular theme or interest of my choosing. This will also include a photograph and curatorial statement for each book I've chosen. I decided to center my mini bibliography around the collection's overarching interconnected themes of authorship and readership. These two themes I've seen throughout the entire semester of working at the Rare Book Room with this collection, and I wanted to highlight the contributions of both the collector, Larry Miller, and the authors that are included in his collection. I selected 13 books to represent these themes. For example, in this photograph of the first page of my mini bibliography, you can see my first entry is the book Asimov's Sherlockian Limericks. And I chose this because it represents, first, the diverse subject matter of Asimov's writing. Second, the dedication of Miller as a fan and collector. And finally, thanks to the personalized inscription by Asimov to Miller, the relationship between author and reader. The third major component of the internship experience is the curation of a library exhibit. My exhibit, once again, centers around the related themes of authorship and readership. It features 5 display cases and 10 accompanying captions. There is a display case dedicated to Asimov's prolific and diverse authorship, Miller's devoted readership, the contributions of other science fiction writers within the collection, and the comics, and the personal correspondence. Curating this exhibit has probably been my favorite part of the internship. It simultaneously allowed me to be creative while also challenging me to practice new styles of writing and design. It's been really rewarding to see a physical manifestation of my work, especially because it's on display for people to view, because I get to share this collection that I've been working on all semester. And I'm very proud of the way it turned out. I also took the initiative to write and design a flyer to advertise the exhibit. I passed them out during the reception of my capstone poster presentation back in November, and I also put some up around campus. I just wanted to promote community engagement by encouraging people to come learn more about Isaac Asimov and see this collection. This exhibit did hit a few roadblocks while we were setting it up, so it took longer than expected, but it's finally complete. All 5 cases are finished, and anyone interested in viewing the exhibit is more than welcome to come see it. It's in the atrium on the 2nd floor of the downtown library. The fourth and final major component of the internship experience is the creation of a blog post reflecting my work and my takeaways, and it will soon be published on the WVU library news site. I wrote and edited a blog post about how, despite not knowing his name until just a few months ago, I learned so much about Isaac Asimov and his impact on society. I've been a casual fan of science fiction for as long as I can remember, consuming science fiction media like Star Wars and Black Mirror and the X-Files. I even have a poster of the Star Wars in the background. But even as a fan, I had no idea of Asimov's ideas from decades and decades ago, some from almost a century ago, even set the foundation for and inspired every single one of these pieces of media. He laid the groundwork for modern science fiction storytelling, and his work pervades science fiction and scientific thinking to this day. His writing still influences portrayals of robots in media, discussions about robotics, and ideas about the ethics of artificial intelligence. So really his work is more relevant than ever, considering the rapid rise of technology and AI. Learning about Asimov's contributions to the science fiction genre and wider society have inspired me to delve deeper into the science fiction world myself, because as I said, it's more relevant than ever. And in addition to these personal takeaways, I've, of course, had the opportunity to strengthen my many different rhetorical and professional skills, including writing, editing, both physical and digital design, project management, time management, and public speaking, of course. I've learned firsthand about the library system by carrying out the entire gift processing procedure with not just any collection, but a very compelling collection of books. And I'd like to thank Stuart for saving this collection for me. Overall, I found this learning experience incredibly valuable. And so I'd like to thank Stuart and the West Virginia Regional History Center Rare Book Room for giving me the opportunity to have this internship experience. And thank all of you for listening.
Thank you, Colleen. Does anyone have any questions for Colleen? I see a couple of things in the chat. Oh.
Thank you.
Colleen, I have one question.
Okay.
You mentioned enjoying the correspondence element of this collection. I would love if you could share something that you learned about science fiction or about Asimov through the personal correspondence.
Personal correspondence. I will say that again, like it was very challenging to organize it all. At one point I had a whole table just laid out with papers everywhere. But I learned a lot. I didn't read every single piece of correspondence word by word, but I did learn about Isaac Asimov and Piers Anthony. Isaac Asimov, he wrote mainly postcards to Miller, and they were all hilarious. My favorite one says it's the one in the front of the display case in the library. It says something along the lines of, you can tell I'm a busy man because I only have time to send out postcards, something like that. And he was self-deprecating too. Yeah. I don't know. It was very interesting to see. And again, it was so cool to hold these postcards and these letters because they were like from the 70s and the 80s. Like they were so old, but at one point in time they were this active communication between these two people. So yeah.
Thanks.
Colleen, we've got a question in the chat from Dee. What's your favorite book that you processed?
What?
Your favorite book that you processed?
That's an interesting question. I do really like Asimov's Sherlockian limericks. Let me find that slide again, because I had such a fun time describing that the cover illustration of Asimov in this big chair, or with the ghost of Sherlock over his shoulder with a pipe in his hand. I thought the art was so cool, and it was the first piece from the collection that really shocked me about like the scope of Asimov's writing. Like I knew he wrote science fiction, obviously, as well as like history and science books, but I didn't realize he had not just this one, but like 5 maybe books solely dedicated to limericks. So it just like really emphasized to me like how prolific and how diverse Asimov was in his writing. He truly never stopped writing, and he wrote about anything and everything.
Thank you. Here's another question from the chat. What skills or techniques did you learn through this work that you think will be most transferable to your career plans?
That is a good question. And I will be graduating in the spring, but I'm still uncertain about a specific career path. But like as you said, these skills are all very transferable to any career I choose to pursue. I think the most transferable skill I think would be the writing, because there were so many different styles of writing, mostly styles that I had never written in before. So there was like the annotated bibliography, which was all very, I did have a chance to get creative with like my descriptions, but it was all very formulaic. And then I had the blog post, which was professional still, but more personal. The exhibit captions were, they had to be short and sweet. They had to be engaging and informative, but concise. And so I think all these different demands for writing will be most transferable to me, because communication is necessary for anything that I would decide to do.
Thank you. Here's another question from the chat. What drew you to process the Asimov collection in the first place?
So I had agreed with Stuart to conduct this internship without knowing which collection I'd be working with at first. I only found out maybe over the summer. I'm not quite sure when Stuart first told me about this specific collection, but I was very excited when she did tell me that this was the collection. Because again, I did not know Isaac Asimov. I guess I've been living under a rock. But as soon as I found out who he was, I got very excited, because as you can tell, like I said, I'm a science fiction fan. So I think that was most appealing to me, I guess, like his contributions to science fiction and the scope of his authorship.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. Are there any other contemporary films, etc., where you see his influence? And this, she says, I'm thinking of Ex Machina or episodes of Black Mirror where you notice the themes he developed. And thanks for the fun presentation and hard work.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right to point out Ex Machina. That is an amazing film. It's been a minute since I've watched it, but I know it does have it centers around this artificial intelligence that its developer is trying to test to tell if other people can find out whether or not it's artificial intelligence, or believe it's another human. And I think this is so influenced by Asimov. I think anything with robots is. I think I might be wrong, but I think he developed the term robotics. Like he introduced that term. And so films like Ex Machina, or the episode of Black Mirror where I forget the title, but a woman's husband dies and she holds on to him by being sent a robot with his internet personality downloaded onto it. I think these ideas are all inspired by Asimov's ideas of artificial intelligence, robots, the relationship between robots and humans. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I see Jonah has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, I'm Jonah. I'm the Scholarly Communications Librarian here at WVU. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the collector, and I've forgotten their name, I'm sorry. One of the things I often enjoy about those kinds of collections is that you learn something about this person that had a real passion for collecting a particular genre or objects or things like that. And I'm wondering, like, did they start out like collecting like the trade paperback, sort of like that mass market book that you buy at the place I see the most often now is like the airport, or you know, were they like always a very serious Asimov collector, getting those like unique special editions that, you know, were sort of those rare prints of Asimov, and anything from the correspondence that you learned about the collector themselves?
Right. So the collector's name was Larry Miller. I learned about him both through the personal correspondence, his collection, obviously, and the information he gave us when Stuart reached out to him and interviewed him. So he started, I believe he said he started writing and drawing his own Superman comics when he was really young. I think he said like 5 years old. So I think he started with comics, and then eventually he started reading. So I think it was Asimov science before his science fiction. So I think Asimov science books were his gateway to science fiction, and then he started reading Piers Anthony, Robert A. Heinlein, Ursula Le Guin, those other authors, in addition to reading all of Asimov. I mean, a lot of Asimov's work. He did have 600 books, but sorry, what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
What kind, like, for his collecting, did he start collecting just like the trade paperback, the cheapest version of the book, right? Or you know, or was he diving in for his Asimov collection and really getting, you know, those like
Right.
more valuable, rarer objects?
Right. I'm not sure which books in the collection he collected first. But I do know that he was a reader before he was a collector. Like I mentioned in the presentation, he underlined the vast majority of his books. He annotated them. He sought out and printed out reviews and comments from like online forums about the books. He was a reader before he thought about collecting the rarer pieces. And he did have a few rarer books, some inscribed by Asimov and a few other authors. But I think mainly he was attracted to the reading and the art, because he was a graphic designer, but he prefers the term art director. Back when he was living in New York in the around the 80s. So he was interested in the art, especially of the comics, and of the reading more so than the collecting. In any discussion specific books or book collecting in general?
Did you see that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
From what I read, and again, I did not read every single word of the correspondence. I can't remember off the top of my head any specific books. I know Miller would ask questions about books or books in progress. He would send not like full-length reviews, but his comments on some of the books, especially Asimov's books. I don't know that he ever talked about the full extent of his book collecting in the correspondence. I don't remember seeing anything about that. But he was, I do know he was interested in writing himself and breaking into the publishing industry, because I do remember seeing he was seeking out advice and connections through Asimov and also Piers Anthony, but mostly Asimov. Yeah, because this
Yes.
Again, this personal correspondence part of the collection was over 100 pieces long. So it wasn't realistic to read every single thing, especially because I only worked like part-time as an intern. So I didn't get the chance to delve into that entirely. Yeah.
Any other questions for Colleen? Okay, Colleen, I have a question for you. You pointed towards the comic books. Would you like to speak just for a minute on the comic books that were part of the collection?
Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to talk about that in my presentation. The comic books, there were about 45 comic books, ranging from the maybe as early as the 60s to the aughts. And as we learned from our interview with Larry Miller, we learned that he approached the collection of his comics specifically, from a visual perspective. Like he was mainly interested in the art and the graphic design of the comics, and I could tell by what he had collected. I mean, before this I didn't really know anything about comics, but the art was amazing in the pieces that he chose to keep. I mean, really, really interesting stuff. Everything from Superman, a lot of Superman, to some Batman books, some really early like paper thin like mashups between like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. He also had a handful of comic books in Italian. They were called Nembo Kid, and I guess that's the Italian version of Superman. It was basically Superman, but there was no S in his crest. So yeah, he was interested in the art above all else when it came to comics.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Colleen today? Okay, I want to thank you all so much for coming to Colleen's presentation. I want to thank Colleen for a great semester. I think she's done a wonderful job, and thank you again for attending.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being here and asking questions.